And joining us on the line now is Peter Morici, University of Maryland economist. Peter, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm fine.
It's good to have you. Now, look, yesterday the president, he came out, and look, I guess everybody in the world has been wrong about this Obamacare thing because the president says, well, look, we got 8 million people signed up, and, this proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Obamacare is a complete and unmitigated success.
Well, if you close all the Safeways and Giants in the Washington area and open up state bologna stores, people will have to buy their food at the state store and eat bologna. And that's exactly what they're getting, is a lot of bologna. I mean, if you take away people's insurance policies, you make them illegal, and then the insurance companies go away. Even if you make them legal again, which happened, they're going to have to buy insurance through the methods that you give them. Now, the question is, will these insurance policies work? In the beginning, the criticism of Obamacare was not about whether they could get the exchange to work. He just messed that up so badly. It's about whether these policies will work. And an awful lot of people now have had coverage that worked for them, that covered the things they needed covered, replaced by other policies with huge deductibles, huge copays and so forth. They're going to the doctor, and all of a sudden they're discovering they're being hit by big bills. So if paying money for insurance that doesn't cover what you need is making something work, that's an interesting concept to me. I bet you the insurance companies think it works.
And on this 8 million number, or do you buy it, or do you have questions about it?
Well, there are questions about that number because of the way they have categorized people. It isn't clear that all of the people that bought insurance just didn't have it before, and things of that nature. But, I mean, that's not really the point. And I know that sounds like, the Republicans made such a big issue of the exchange not working, but in the beginning, before they muffed that, the issue was, is this system going to work effectively? Are there going to be enough doctors? Will people get the care they need at prices they can afford? Now, this remains to be seen.
Well, and let me pull on that thread a little bit there, Peter Morici, because I think that possibly Republicans were making too much of a big deal of the lack of signups early on because it was such a headline and it was so easy to mock. And we've sort of walked into this narrative where Obama can now say, well, look, I've got all these numbers, so obviously it's a success. Is this really the measure of success? 8 million people? We were told 40 million people, first of all, needed health insurance, and that's why we had to hand over 1/6 of our economy to the government. And number two, let's face it, they're going to be fined if they don't sign up. So, of course, they're going to get people to sign up because people don't want to get fined by the government.
Well, the fines are fairly small the first year, so they weren't much of a sanction. Also, a lot of people were signed up through Medicaid, essentially. And the people that weren't insured before are now covered by Medicaid. So there's that aspect of things. But it'll be interesting to see just how many of the 45 million to 50 million people are ultimately covered some way or another. It doesn't sound like an awful lot of them. It doesn't sound like half, but we'll have to see.
But even still, let's say it was 20 million that get covered. If the coverage is bad, if people are unhappy with it, and it ends up costing us way more than we wanted, how is that a success?
You see, that's the whole problem. The Republicans are focusing on the macro issue. What they really ought to be doing is digging up the people that have lost the coverage on the kinds of care, not coverage overall, but whose new policies don't cover the kinds of care they need and are creating hardship and in some cases death because they can't get to specialized physicians and things of that nature. That's the stories they should be digging up. If they want to focus on whether the website works, I think the President of the United States, at great cost to the country, can marshal the resources to make a website work eventually. Yeah. And so sooner or later, he's going to be a success. Once again, this is the lack of strategic thinking on the part of the Republican leadership. I mean, where's been Boehner in all this? I mean, if I was Speaker of the House, I'd be standing alongside that cancer patient in California who lost her coverage to the specialist she needed to keep her alive. I mean, I'd be rolling them out. Don't you remember how good Bill Clinton was at going from meeting after meeting and pointing at a single person and having them make a great example? I mean, Boehner is as skilled a politician as I am a major league shortstop.
All right. Well, there we go.
Enough said.
So I've asked this question of Stuart Varney. I've asked this question of Larry Kudlow. I want you to weigh in if you could, please, because I'm trying to figure out as I look at the markets these days. It seems like it's like a roller coaster. I mean, it is just up and then it's down dramatically. Then it's back up. I mean, yesterday and the day before I think were pretty good days, but we had some really, really, really ugly days last week. What is going on with all of this volatility in the market? What's causing it?
Well, first of all, you spoke to two of the three greatest minds. I'm glad you're finishing the set.
That's right. I will have the answer by the time you get through.
Okay. A couple of things. One is that some of these tech stocks aren't worth what they say they are. Twitter still really hasn't turned a profit, but yet it's valued in enormous sums just on the basis of potential. And the potential of these things isn't quite like the potential of the automobile when that came along. They're fun to play with, but it isn't clear that anybody's willing to pay for them. So you've got that problem. The other is just look how quickly the future of tech stocks come and go. I mean, Yahoo's core business, which is Yahoo's very highly valued right now because it owns Alibaba, 40% of Alibaba in China. But I mean, its core business continues to shrink, despite the fact that they hired a beautiful and a very expensive CEO and then a very expensive CIO and Katie Couric and all the rest. A lot of these tech stocks, it isn't clear that they have any real value. The other thing is the ordinary stocks, the GEs of the world that actually make stuff that are useful.
Right.
Those folks are very dependent on China. And China and places in Asia, which are all dependent on China, and China is becoming more and more difficult to read in terms of its future. There are a lot of very troubling things going on over there. What you've got is a lot of uncertainty that people are having more trouble deciphering than they were able to decipher in the past.
It sounds to me, Peter Morici, like you're sort of raising a flag of a potential stock high-tech bubble emerging again when you've got all of the, like we saw in the late 90s where we had a lot of overvalued internet stocks that never really turned a profit, but people kept waiting for that profit to happen, and then the bubble burst.
The thing that tech stocks do best is make a promise. Fulfilling promises they're kind of short on. I mean, everybody knows somebody who bought Microsoft when it was, $2 or something. They gave the folks out there some money to get going, or Apple. But that's a problem with tech stocks, and they are getting very, very frothy. Now, valuations overall are high, but they're not so high as to cause us to think bubble. But we get new things all the time in the market, and it could be possible that we could have a tech stock burst while the rest of the market keeps going.
Yeah.
So it pulls down the averages for a while, but the market generally keeps going because the prospects for the global economy in the coming year, if the Russians don't blow up the world, are pretty decent. I mean, they're not spectacular, but things are shifting. Growth is shifting from Asia to the Atlantic community again, which is a normal process. And when things are shifting, it creates uncertainty, and people have to adjust. But that doesn't mean there aren't growing profits out there to be had, and that some stocks are not going to benefit.
Peter Morici, University of Maryland economist, thanks for joining us today. Have a great weekend.